Hey, everybody. I want to welcome you to Boss Gals Talking Tea. I am one of your co hosts, Casey. And
Yolanda.
all right. And today we are joined by some lovely guests. We have one of our boss gals who works in corporate America, and then one of our boss gals in the government sector. Now, here's what we're going to do before we get into this great conversation today. Let's just go over the mission of Boss Gals. Remember, we are here to empower professional women to reach new heights of success, where we foster a supportive environment that aids in unlocking endless possibilities for professional and a leadership development. So, again, we want to welcome you to this show. And remember, you can follow us on Instagram at Boss Gals. Later in the show, we will cover some of the outside work that both of our guests do. But for now, let's get into our topic. But before we begin, I'm just going to allow a couple of seconds for Jacqueline and Nikita, Mrs. Nikita Marsh and Miss Jacqueline Thorne to introduce themselves. So, Miss Jacqueline, if you can go ahead and start first.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am Jacqueline Thorne. I'm also related to the lovely Yolanda Thorne. And we are cousins, sister cousins. I in the DMV area, and I work for the government, local government. I work with federal funds, and I've been working in the transportation industry for about 30 years. I have worked in corporate America at some points, but that it seems to be, I keep getting pulled back, and it's my niche to be in working with the government. So I've had several different positions, and I've had different experiences, and it's not similar to corporate. The government structure is very different. We work in grades and steps, and we serve the people, if you will. So it's a little bit different. So I can definitely look forward to this conversation and hopefully resonate with others who have worked in the private sector or sectors that don't have the same structure as a corporate structure. So thanks for having me.
All right, good. All right. And Mrs. Nikita Marsh, just give us a small little intro about yourself.
So I am Nikita Marsh. Who am I? That's always a good question. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. I am a program manager for in the financial industry. And before doing that, I've spent 18 years in health and human services. So social worker by trade, that just decided to do something different, and it's really, really worked out. So excited about today's conversation. Appreciative of the invite. Glad to be with you ladies today and looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Thank you so much. Now, listen, everybody, before we get into the topic of what we're going to talk about, we had a pre-show, y'all. And let me tell you something. They broke it down. They broke it all the way down. I don't even know the song where they broke it down for us. So I really want you to, if you can, keep your focus in on this show, and then ask yourself some questions as you listen to both Miss Jacqueline and Mrs. Nikita speak. So today, you all are favored as we're going to talk about career transitions and getting unstuck. Now, here's the thing. With all four of us on this panel, I think we probably all bring a combined experience of about 40 or 50 years to the workforce.
Or more.
Or more.
Oh, but I'm just saying.
Plus.
We bring 10 years because we're
Plus.
We all just got out of high school. But I think at some point in all of our lives, we have gotten to a place where we're like, what are we doing? And then you kind of go into that long thought process of how do I get out of here? And so again, you are all blessed to hear some of the great words of, my very own co-host, Yolanda, and then Jacqueline and Nikita. So we're going to start by allowing our guests to speak. And so I want both of them to just briefly explain what did their career path look like in the beginning, in the very, very beginning. So.
Yeah, I'll take this one first. So I have a bachelor's degree in psychology and a master's degree in social work. So, coming directly out of undergrad, my goal was, hey, I want to be a therapist. I want to help people. I want to give back. And graduating undergrad, I worked full time while I was in undergrad, working with children with severe mental health issues. And it really I think the path almost chose me. because I got into it and I couldn't really let go of it, right? And so after I got my master's degree, I continued doing that work and just really feeling like, okay, well, yeah, therapy is great, but I really want to do this work. And I'm not sure if I want to be in an office with a client every day. And somebody needs to do this work for these children. So I spent, like I said, 18 years in health and human services, transitioned mostly into administrative positions where I led the programming and built and developed the programming, grew the programming to help support basically children, families in their communities. Um, and spent a lot of time just doing that work and really kind of seeing that work done well until it wasn't, right. And so when I hit that it wasn't until it wasn't point was where I really kind of had to make some decisions about what was next.
All right, and we'll talk about the until it wasn't part of that. Now for you, Jacqueline, what did your early career path look like for you?
Well, I'll say I was very fortunate to go to Murray Bertram High School for Business Careers. So my early jobs were working at 26 Federal Plaza, Midtown, Wall Street. So I had a different perspective. So before I even graduated high school, I was introduced to the business world, right? Having internships at these different places and paid internships. And it was in Manhattan, from Queens, New York. And I went to school, Norfolk State University, for mass communications. I thought I was going to be either a journalist or I was going to I don't know. Sue Simmons. I just remember Sue Simmons. She was a newscaster growing up. I wanted to report the news, and I've always loved writing. And so, let the dial turn. A couple of decades. I am a published writer, and I work in grants, and I work with the federal government. So in a way, it came to fruition, but that's what I initially thought that I would do, that I would be some kind of journalist. And then I said in our pre-show, I worked in transportation, and I worked for the government for a long period of time. And I fell in love with grants and procurement. So I work in contracting, and now I work for the state of Maryland, and I manage multi-billion-dollar projects along the Northeast Corridor, transportation, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, but it's like a magnet. I'm still always attracted to be put in this work. So my story is a little bit different. I didn't initially think that I would be a government worker or that I would work even with transportation, but I'm in love with it. I'm a transportation geek. And so every city and province needs transportation to work, whether that be a sidewalk or a train or car. So I'm just fully engulfed. So that's how my career started and how it sort of transitioned.
So let me just jump in here, because this was definitely not planned. Jacqueline and Casey have similar backgrounds in that their desire, right, was in journalism, sportscasting, right, that whole field. And then Nikita and I have very similar backgrounds in that in my past life, I was a social worker who transitioned to corporate America. And I don't even, so Jacqueline is my sister cousin, but I don't even think that I knew that that was your major. Now, of course, I know you're a writer, but
right.
So this is going to be, I think, a very interesting conversation.
And it's funny because I was getting ready to ask you, Yolanda, don't you and Nikita have the same kind of start in the career path? And Jacqueline and I have a degree in journalism. And while Sue Simmons was who you looked up to, Stuart Scott was who I looked up to. That's who I wanted to kind of emulate. Hannah Storm, a little bit of her as well. But yeah. So I love that we kind of all, and we're in,
right. The boxes are
beside each other. You're in the Brady Bunch.
Yeah.
Okay. But now here's where it gets good, y'all, because Nikita stayed at 18 years She gave it all.
18 years. Well, and because I loved it, right? I loved the work. I loved the kids. I loved the purpose of the work. And then when I, like really early on in my career, I saw this work done very well. I worked with a team of people who are still like family to me all of these years later. And there was a lot of collaboration in how we did this work to serve these children and these families. And I saw it done really, really well. And it drove my purpose and my passion in wanting to continue to progress that. But things happen, life changes, life be life in. And and
For real
and
though.
specifically in the nonprofit sector, our budgets are cut first. We are hit the hardest financially when there's any type of economic change, specifically when you're talking about mental health care, and children who need additional care and resources. The resources are always extremely limited. And at some point, it became a conversation of the bottom line and the dollar over the need to protect and ensure safety for these children. And so for me, it became a major ethical dilemma.
Mm.
And I can't continue to function this way because the purpose of the expressed purpose and the implemented purpose were not the same, right? So it is good for us to go and to say, hey, we're here for the kids and we want to do this for these families and we're here to serve the community. But the actions that actually were supposed to support that did not reflect that same mission. And it just became an ethical dilemma for me. And I had to make a decision to kind of, put my own life jacket on, put your oxygen mask on first, save yourself. You have to save yourself first before you can help save somebody else. And I really felt like when I did decide to make a transition, that was where I was. Like, I have to do something different because if I continue to do this, the burnout it's going to kill me. Like, I can't do this anymore.
So you've given it 18 years, you decided to
Mhm.
put on the life jacket, but again, now let's talk about some of our viewers. A lot of our viewers are somewhat like you and Yolanda, where you worked in the same field for a long time.
Mhm.
How do you what does that pivot moment look like and how do you get there? Because
Hmm.
people want to see resumes that say ABC. You've been doing ABC for
Right.
18 years. So talk about that life jacket moment and how do you convince yourself, okay, I'm ready to transition, and then how do you actually make it pop? Okay, let me be professional. How do you make it happen? Not pop.
How do you make it happen? Um, I think the first thing is for me, and I can speak from my experience. The first thing was really having to buy into the fact that what I was doing wasn't working, right? Generally, and speaking from a single Black person, Black woman perspective, my Black woman experience, um, we want to fix everything, everybody, right? We want to save the world, we want to save the people, we're saving the fish, the dolphins, everything, right? We want to fix it. And and so it was one of those moments where I realized that I fixing it, the problem was bigger than anything that I had the ability to fix independently, right? That was the first thing. The second thing was realizing how much, like, we often hear you can't pour from an empty cup, right? My
Mm,
cup was bone dry,
mm,
and I was still trying to figure out ways to put something in it so that I had something to give to it. And it really was like this moment of, full tears, full breakdown, complete almost devastation in the fact that I can't do this anymore. And I don't know how to quit. Right. I don't know how to quit it. I don't know, because quitting, we don't do that. We don't quit. We see
That's
it through.
right.
We finish it.
Loyal
We
to a
fix it.
fault.
We're
mm,
loyal to a thought. So it really took literally my circle having to say to me,
mm.
this is not to your benefit. It's not working for you. And once that clicked for me, it was leveraging my same circle to say, okay, this is where I'm taking self assessment, right? This is where I see my skills. This is where I see my strengths. I literally went to the point of sending out questions to people that I trusted in my circle to say, hey, can you answer these questions for me and tell me what you see as my opportunities for growth? Where do you see my strengths? Where do you see, like, what can you help me define as core skills that I do really well? And where are there places where I have deficits and things that I can really like leverage on how I grow those character traits, right? And I handpicked folks that I knew would be transparent with me, and who I knew would give me feedback that I could receive. And then I took that feedback and figured out, okay, how do I now translate all of these skills that I have into something that makes me more marketable, right? Because we lock ourselves in, and Yolanda can probably speak to this a little bit, but I am very adamant that social work and social worker are not the same thing. Right. So
Right.
we have this language that when you say, if I say to you, I'm a social worker, what do you think I do? Just tell me what comes to
I'm
mind.
gonna just say for me, I think you visit homes for children who are
Mhm,
in homes that maybe need some monitoring. Also, with social work, I think you handle things like child support. I
mhm.
think you handle things like kids who are born in the NICU and maybe the moms aren't as active. They call you all in to come in to kind of figure out what's going on with the parents. Social work. When I think of social work, I just think the home is not in the stable, and you're there to help the children.
See, and what you're saying aligns with what a lot of people think when they hear social work.
Mhm.
When I think about social work to me says I know how to engage and interact with people, right? Social work is an assessment skill. I know how to read the room. I know how to ask a question. I know how to figure out the problem, and I know how to present solutions for you to so that you now see the options that you have and how you handle and whatever that problem is, right? It's not just social worker specific. And so I just got really intentional about changing the narrative, right? And going into conversations with people and getting them to see social work the way that I saw social work, right? We are people managers. We assess people. And we do that most of the time when the people are in crisis. So when your personal crisis is generally heavier than your professional crisis. Most of us know how to leave our professional crises at, you leave them at work. You can turn it off sometimes. But when you're dealing with your day-to-day personal challenges, those are the things that you carry with you. And as a social worker, the expectation is that we're able to go in, assess those situations, and help you figure out those personal challenges. We do the same thing in professional and corporate environments.
All right, all right. So hold that thought because you're going somewhere. You're taking a job role that you have, and you're really picking out the
Mhm.
characteristics of. You're going further than what we think it is,
Yeah.
whether further than what the job description is. What is it that you're assessing what you really do? So let's talk about that because that's going to help a lot of people. Now, before we go there, Jacqueline, you are still in the government sector.
I
Um,
am.
so help us understand, like, what is it that we should, I mean, you don't have to give us the ends, but in the government sector, uh what does raises look like? What do job promotions look like? Is it common? Is it regular? I mean, do you really have to love what you do? Talk to me a bit about the government sector and where you are.
It is common for people who work in the government sector, whether it's federal, state, or local, um, to serve more than one role, multiple roles, right? And so personally, I have worked in many responsibilities or areas where it's just me and I need to find a way to build a team, right? And so I've been given the responsibility of something, and then it's up to me to use my skill set to work with people and find out the answers, right? Find out if there's a contract that I could draw down from to get some assistance to manage a part of something that I need to oversee. And when we were prepping for this call, where I am right now is so relevant to the conversation because you asked about raises or promotions. Um, we work in grades and steps. All forms of government, they work in grades and steps. And I can only speak from my experience and the people that I know. It's just not always so likely that you'll get a grade and or a step. People could be working for 20 or 30 years or until retirement, still sort of being at the same grade, but not the same step, or learning that when you go to a different grade, make sure your step goes with you, right? So it's not a given that I know that I can hear people in the corporate sector saying, oh, it's bonus time. It's the end of the year. I'm getting evaluations. We get evaluated every year, but we don't get, additional money every year, right? And that doesn't mean that you don't get more responsibility. So it does take a different mindset, and to dig your heels in, for the long term. Or maybe it's not for you, right? Maybe this generation is used to, I think, the average like 3 years before they go to a new job or do something different. And I'm sort of coming from the old school, whereas I'm not working 20 years to get a watch, but that's who I was raised by, right? So I'm not a job hopper, right? Even if I don't have the same job, I'm still sort of usually under the same umbrella, right? And that's usually what people do. I know that for a long time I was trying to work to my 10-year goal until I vested, right? Because that means that I could tap into that retirement when I when I retire, and you just not guarantee that. Now that I've went past my 10 years, now it's okay. I wanted to go to a different sector. I wanted to go to the federal sector. We see what's going on with the federal sector right now. And I likely would have been caught in the sweep of, probation. People under probation have had a job in under 2 years working with the federal government. So now I'm trying to get to 16 years, right? I'm at 13. I'm trying to get to 16 because that ensures my medical, right? So it's just, if I've already invested this time, I'm gonna, I know I probably said lemon before. I'm allergic to lemons. That's a long story. I'm gonna make limeade out of my limes.
No, that's right. Don't even speak that on your life.
I'm gonna make limeade out of my limes.
That's right. I love it. Everybody, hear ye. Everybody don't like lemonade, so you make an apple pie out of apple.
Well, she likes lemonade. She just can't have lemonade.
Because she understands that she's gonna make limeade.
She's gonna make limeade. That's right.
I make limeade. Yeah, I can do limes. So yeah, that's just a little bit. And I think I'm pretty sure that people who work in the government sector can relate to that. The steps, the grades. And some of it is doing, what you love. But to be honest, some of it is just making a living, right? If you, have a partnership or a spouse, that's great, right? And hopefully you can balance it out where the other partner could be a little more, free with the type of jobs that they get. But, we're going to get the health care. We're going to get good coverage with this government position and cover the family, and the other person can work in a different field where they're not, they're not subject to sort of stay there and make certain goals. So I've had several different positions, but it seems that I have still some more work to do. And so, I guess we'll talk later about how I, actually made, cut up those limes and put agave, not sugar, and I stirred it up, and that's, sort of brought me where I am now.
Yeah, and Casey, when we get to like talking about transferable skills, although you didn't ask me,
I was about to ask you.
Share. I'm impatient.
Everybody to hear about how all four of us, I believe we all have relatable stories about the transition. So Yolanda, go ahead and share.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, so Jacqueline and I went to the same high school, right? She majored in secretarial studies. Is that right?
Secretarial science.
Secretarial science. I majored in computer science. And so through high school, I, learned programming. And my freshman year in college, remember I told you I have a social work background, but my freshman year in college, I was actually a computer science major. Well, me and pre-calculus that I took 2 times didn't get along so well. In addition to that, one day I had a program that I just couldn't figure out, and it was just me. It was different than high school. High school, I had all my friends in class. It was social, that whole thing. But this day, along with the pre-calculus, I had a program I couldn't figure out. It was just me and that computer, and I was like picturing my life, right? 20 years, 30 years down the line. I was like, no, I can't do this. This is not what I imagined it to be. So I started talking to other people about their majors, and I discovered social work, right? And I'm not even sure at the time that I knew why it interested me. I mean, my mom, was she didn't have a social work degree, but in essence, she was a social worker, right? She was a counselor for drug addiction, a drug addiction counselor, right? So she was in service really all of her life. And so I decided to switch to social work. Was in social work 8 years, and different than Nikita, I actually I did a couple of different things. One, my first job was working with the homeless. I worked at a place that provided services for the homeless, as well as food assistance, financial assistance, things like that. So I did that for a couple of years, and then in that same place, that same organization, I worked with women who, I say families, mostly women who were on welfare. I don't know if they call it that anymore, but I think everybody can relate to at least that title, right? Women who were receiving public assistance, but they were in school or working, right? So these were some working poor that were working but eligible for public assistance, and they had children. And so, as Nikita described, right, my job was working with them to find resources to help solve problems, to do all those kinds of things. Fast forward, and worked there for several years. Then I started working for my church for a few years. And I'm which I think probably most of us are, lifelong learner, right? And so when I started working for my church, my role was completely different. I was an administrative assistant initially, right? And then I had to start doing like accounting and stuff like that. So I decided to get my associate's degree so I could do my job better. Did that for a while. And because I was doing that, I knew someone who worked at my alma mater. I won't say it, who worked at my alma mater and knew that the computer science department needed a program manager. So started working there. And my job was to encourage those computer science students to pursue, go straight ahead and pursue their master's or their doctorates, right? And they were doing some really, really, really great research. And so, my salary doubled from when I was working as a social worker to that. And I started thinking, OMG, when this grant runs out that I'm paid from, runs out, I'm not going to be able to find a job. At least that was my mindset, right? I'm not going to be able to find a job that is going to pay me this with my social work degree. At that time, I didn't have a Nikita to tell me about transferable skills, right? So working at my university, I had the opportunity to take some free classes. And so I said, you know what? I need to put my money where my mouth is. I'm telling these students. So I decided to get a master's degree. Went back to my first love, which is information. Well, my first love was computer science, but technology. When I went to school a long time ago and got my bachelor's, information technology did not exist as a major. It was either computer science or engineering or bust. But by the time I got my master's in my 40s, several years ago, information technology was there. And so I decided to get my master's in information technology. Now, the wonderful thing about what Nikita said in terms of these transferable skills, when I talk to people about my 3 degrees, which are completely different, the reality is that the bottom line is I'm using the same skill set, right? So now I work in corporate America. I've worked in auditing, technology, the technology area of the business. I've actually worked in technology, did technology projects. And now I'm doing like business operations, right? So using 2 of those degrees, that's obvious. But with both social work and technology, what I love about it is I am a problem solver.
Mhm.
One is solving problems with people. The other is solving problems with technology, right? And even in business operations, still the same thing, right? There's problems. I'm figuring it out. I'm doing some of that administrative stuff, but I'm figuring out how to make things work. And so, mine was a little backwards, then came back around, but it's still kind of the same skill set. And one of the things that Nikita and I both have, right, as a leg up on some of the people that we work with, is that social work background, right? Knowing people, understanding people, knowing how to build relationships,
Soft
assessing,
skills.
right? Assessing
Soft
situations.
skills.
And it gets us pretty far, right? Just that set of soft skills of knowing people, understanding people, working with people, understanding how the mind thinks when you're working with very difficult people,
Mhm.
right? You know how to, if this person just needs you to say, hey, thank you so much. I'm gonna bring you a cookie, right? And they're your friend for life. And I've made some friends for life at work that will do anything for me, and I sent them some cookies, right? Or is that person just needs a compliment, whatever it is. But the point is that all of those things for me and my career now work together, right, to make me successful. And so I just kind of wanted to share that.
Okay. So, all right. Let's kind of change the direction of where we're going.
Mhm.
So this is talking about career transitions and getting unstuck, right? So let's take the getting unstuck and kind of redesign that into, or kind of change how we say that. Basically, you all redesigned your career trajectory. Now, Jacqueline, we'll get into you and what you've done. But Nikita, kind of talk about those transferable skills, because I keep hearing the both of you say you were in social work. However, you took some of the, Nikita, I heard you say soft skills, and you use them to kind of change the trajectory of where you're going. And now, you know, you kind of changed your path and what you're doing. So just talk a little bit about that. Nikita, you can start about what did you do? How did you redesign your career trajectory?
Well, I think the first thing is really self-assessment, right? And I think a lot of us struggle with really being true in how we self-assess and really being able to look at ourselves, accept what we do well, and define what we don't, right? Define where we have challenges. So self-assessment was really the first thing. Like, okay, these are the skills that I know that I have, the things that I do really, really well. I talked a little bit about asking questions of the people around you, getting that feedback, and then leveraging that feedback. I will say, my husband was a champion and a cheerleader for me in this transition. And probably the one time and the one thing that I will forever
Mhm.
say that he was right about was he said to me, he said, well, you should look into project management. And initially I kind of dismissed it because I was like, well, I haven't really done that work before. It doesn't really sit with what I do. And he basically just kind of kept pushing it. He's like, no, you need, like, that's what you do. You project manage the house, you project manage everything. He would come home and talk about his issues at work. And I would be like, well, why don't they just do this, 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 and this? And he's just like, yeah, you need to be a project manager. And so I took that, right? I took what he said. Um, and started to research project management and what it meant. And learned that this is exactly the work that you've been doing. In social work, they don't call it project management, because if I call you a project manager, I have to pay you the market rate for project management, right? So we didn't have you are now seeing more project management titles in social work, but 20 years ago you weren't seeing those roles. They were very scarce. Um, and as the director of the program or the regional director or whatever, you did the work as a part of the role, right? You ran all of your projects. So the language was different, right? So one of the things that I had to do was really to transfer that language, right? So going from social work into finance in a financial industry, it's like German, right? Like the language is so different. And so I had to be intentional about learning that language and being able to speak their language. But I also had to be true to myself and the skills that I had coming into those spaces and being able to sell myself, right? Like we struggle a lot of the times with talking about who we are and what we do and where we're good, and how good we are, right? And I really had to be comfortable and confident. And I'm a type A personality, so I'm a big personality. So that's not as hard for me as it may be for others, but being able to really kind of sell who I am and why there was a benefit, right? Because I can tell you, I went on in that transition, I probably went on 20 interviews before I got a yes, right? And people, but the feedback was the same. Oh my gosh, you're amazing. You're great. We love you. We love your skills, right? Because one thing that I was able to do was to convey where you had a deficit and what I could bring to that for you, right? And so I think one of the things that I've seen across my transition and even helping others, like I talk to a lot of women who are teachers, who are social workers, and who are nurses, right? And because primarily those are the industries and the environments that we sit in, and those are areas where we have lower paying positions, right? So we already know teachers, they don't make nearly what they should. Um, Social workers don't make the money that they should, and generally, kind of like Jacqueline was talking about, when you're working for the government and or working for nonprofits, there's not a lot of raises, there's not a lot of pay increases, you don't see cost of living increases. So whatever you come in with your salary is, a lot of the times, that's where you are. You're kind of plateauing where you started, right? Which is a challenge for us as a whole. And then with nurses, when we think about nurses, we think RNs, right? But more so often than not, for African American women, we're talking CNAs and LPNs, which are lower paid nursing positions, right? So these are the women that I've been speaking with about how do you identify and how do you define those transitions. And it goes back to, how are you able to redefine what you've learned and re-see it for yourself? You have to re-envision it for yourself in order for you to be able to sell somebody else on it. And I think that that's half of our battle, is like we are so forward on what we see that we're not visionary in what we see, right? We see the real of, hey, this is the picture, but we struggle with seeing beyond what's originally presented. And when we're able to do that, we see all of these things that we're doing and that we've been doing that we didn't know that we could do. And you've already been doing it.
And I just want to go over, because everybody, as you're watching this, understand there's going to be a part two, because this is a lot. But as Nikita broke down, you have to do a self-assessment. So that's number one, everyone. Then get some family and friends, like genuine family and friends who can really champion your transition. I love that. That was when you said your husband championed your transition. Love that. Do your research. Can't be lazy in it. I mean, if you're really going to go for this, do your research. Transfer the language. That's big. And maybe Jacqueline and grants, I saw something on like Instagram where we say, for grants, you can't say this, you got to transfer that language.
Right. There's a language, there's a
lady.
Right. There is a naming convention, right? So this means that in this world, this means that in that world. So you need to know which world you pick.
He said no youth no youth lock-in. You're doing a community.
It's community building for social skill development for children's age, for at-risk youth age 12 to 18,
There
right?
you
That's
go.
youth lock-in. It's the
There you
same
go.
thing, but
So
it's not the same thing.
yeah,
And look,
so she,
and Casey, as you're doing your recap too, there was something else she said that I want. We may have to do it later, but one of the things that stood out to me when out of all the stuff that she said was when she said she went on like 20 interviews before she got a yes.
that stuck out to me because I hear nowadays people are going on like 400 and 500. They're submitting 400 and 500 resumes and going on like 80, 90 interviews, and they're getting nothing.
Yeah,
Right.
it is, and I think there's a couple things with that, right? So technology is our friend, but technology is also our enemy when we don't understand how to leverage it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're submitting all of these applications, and I literally just went through this conversation with a young man that I was helping to do some transitioning and stuff, right? Like how your resume reads is important. The language and using keywords is important because you're going through nobody's hanging. No, look, I've done hundreds of interviews, right? And I will spend a minute looking at your resume. If it doesn't stick out to me, then it's on to the next. And that's after they've already been reviewed and gone through an automatic system that's pulling them and sending them to me. Right. So
Okay,
I'm sorry. But the thing that stood out to me, because I do know that people are applying a lot, but the other thing is I've talked to people who after they've, like particularly like internal, right? They're doing some internal searches, right? At the place where they are. And after like 2 or 3 no's, they're like, well, I didn't get it. And you have to have perseverance.
yes,
You can't take those no's personal at all, right? Because there are hundreds, if not thousands of people, right? If you're internal, there's at least hundreds of other people who are applying for the same job, understanding that they may already have somebody in some instances, right, that they have in mind. And it's just not personal. You have to keep going. And the one is for you is for you. If you're applying outside, right, then you're probably talking about thousands of people who are applying for the same job. And so, shoot, if you give up or feel like you want to give up after, 2 or 3 because you have taken the rejection personally, then you are going to stay stuck, right? Stay stuck.
I think that, but that's one of those places where I'm sorry, but I think that's one of those places where positive reframing is necessary, right? And so here comes my social worker, the social worker in me. Positive reframing is necessary. So you can go from I submitted 400, applications. I had 20 interviews, and all 20 said no. But you only need one yes, right? Yeah, you got all of those no's, but you really only need one yes, and you need that one right yes, right? And so, but you also need to be intentional about that, right? So when I had very candid conversations after those first, 19 or whatever rejections, I had really candid conversations to say, hey, because I did keep getting the same kind of feedback. You're great, but we want somebody who has this experience already. You haven't worked in this industry. We want somebody who has this experience. And so then I started to change the way I was having those conversations. Okay, so then my questions become, are you open to considering someone who may have a set of skills that benefits you, but who has not worked in this industry? Like, where are the opportunities for that? And being able to reframe those conversations so that people see me and they see the benefit, and it helps them to align with what they need versus what I don't have. Right. So it was also actively being aware of those conversations and having conversations with other people to help me who were in those positions and who had those experiences, and asking them, okay, this is the situation, this is the feedback that I continue to get. How can I help reframe what I'm saying? Because there were times where I felt like I'm saying exactly what you're saying it is that you need, but you're not hearing that from me because all you see is social work, right? So again, let's go back to that language. How do I say this How do I translate this from, soft skill, maybe a bit passive, to a more assertive, presentation of, this is how I can better support you. This is what I see as your deficit, and this is how I can implement myself. And then this is what this is what I'm going to be able to deliver for you in this environment, right? But you're actively, and again, it goes back to step number one, right? Self-assessing. You're constantly reframing and re-looking and reevaluating to say, this is where I am. This is the feedback that I've gotten. What do I need to do differently?
Now, I want to just finish off. After we did transfer the language, Nikita said, be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think one of the biggest pieces is selling yourself. I can honestly say when I transitioned from operations to training, I'd never done it before. So I had to really sell myself. And that was one of the biggest pieces that I felt like worked in my favor, was I really, when I sold myself. Now I had like the friend group, Yolanda and another friend who sat with me and helped. But the selling yourself is very important. Sometimes you got to get here.
And the other thing is, when you talked about folk putting in like 400 or 500 applications, at that point, maybe you need to reevaluate your resume, right? So, right. So we have AI now. Now, I haven't put my resume in one of the AI tools just to see what it puts out. But what I did do several years ago, before the AI tools were really there, is I hired a guy, and I'll give him a plug because he has been good to me. His name is Franklin Buchanan, and you can find him on LinkedIn, Franklin Buchanan. But Franklin sat with me and we redid my resume, right? Where it didn't read as a job description, but it highlighted my achievements. In corporate, we call it the so what, right? So what, you were a program manager. What did you do? Like what are the quantifiable things, right? How do you measure what you did? So for instance, I'll give you an example. I was something called a product owner, right? And in past times, right, similar to project manager, probably similar in most industries, but in technology, a product owner is someone who writes all the requirements and all that for technology change, right? And so on my resume for the product owner stuff, I have something like, and I'm not memorizing it, I'm going to make it up because I don't remember now, but something like, we reduced errors, or it's not called errors, but I'll just say reduce errors by 75%, right? Delivered, so that this quantifiable, right? 75%. I created a workflow, right? But because of this workflow, I cut down on 90% of the emails that people were sending to find out the progress of A, B, C, D, and E, right? I got this award, right? Best employee award because of this work, right? And so those are the things that are in bold for each of my job descriptions, because if somebody's hiring you for a product owner, they already know what a product owner is supposed to do, right? They don't need the job, the task, the job descriptions. They want to know, but what do you bring to the table? And I had a hard time articulating that stuff, right? I hate redoing resumes, hate. And so I had someone who has been a recruiter, who's been all of those things, right? To help me and I paid him, right? He wasn't super expensive. I don't know what his prices are now, but
probably $1 billion.
But it was an investment in me. And when I tell you, after I redid my resume, the number of hits that I got where people started actually calling me for interviews changed. I don't know, again, what ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini or some of these other ones do in reference to that, but sometimes you do need a human touch. If you can't afford a human touch, then try with one of those tools, but you might need to get somebody to help you redo your resume and your executive summary, which mine is off the chain, I'm just going to say. And I use that same resume for almost any job that I apply for, and I change two things. The title. So I'll say program management professional. And then I have a set of skills, right? That's bulleted in between my executive summary and my job experience. And based on what the competencies that are required for that role, now I don't lie, but I switch it around because the competencies for a program manager is different than the competencies for a community relations manager, right? And so I want to highlight those skills. And so you get a good resume, it can take you a long way because you got to get in the door to have the opportunity to wow them.
All right. So we've gotten those tips, everybody. So now let's just kind of really be real with this conversation because some of us, we want to stay where we are. Let's just keep it real. So
Yeah.
everybody is not interested in making that transition. A lot of people are, but for some of us that are like, how can I make the most when I'm at my job if I don't want to move? I know the pay isn't great. I know I'm not getting my yearly promotions. What can I do? So I want Jacqueline kind of hone in on what did you do in staying in the government sector, possibly until you're ready to make that transition. But what did you do to kind of help redefine or reshape, how you see your employment while you decide to remain there?
Well, I want to go back a little bit. I think, Nikita, you mentioned renaming. And I think experience, we don't give ourselves enough credit for our experience is our education and what you're performing or what you're doing. And I think we're so busy doing that you don't take time to like sort of break down what you're doing, what you're performing, how those skills, balance out or are mimicked in other areas. So I'm going to take it back to before I had this job, right? Just sort of like even in I think that we're all we have beliefs, and in my spiritual walk there was a time before I had this position that I was underemployed, right? And so while it's a blessing to have this job, I was able to remember when I didn't have that job, right? I was trying to get to that point. And I remember when before I received this job, I don't even know how many positions I applied for, but I kept on evaluating as best qualified, right? There's qualified, there's best qualified, but I wasn't sort of getting those positions. And people used to say to me, "Oh, God doesn't give you what you can receive before you can handle it," right? But when you in a desperate situation, you don't want to hear all that.
You are getting the resume.
Exactly.
I need it. And
Exactly.
and even we give power to words. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's not that you're unstuck, that you're not evaluating your experience and what it brings, or you're not again, I love what you said, Nikita, about getting some guidance from people who know you,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes we need that mirror held back up to us
Mhm.
to strengthen or to remind you like how great you are, and how your skills translate and how you're received by other people. And that helps, like with your husband, that helped show you that, oh, okay, yes, I can do that. It's just called something different. So I'll say that if you're planning, if you're not the happiest on where you are, you have to, I would suggest you break down some things, right? Categorize some things, right? What's important? Where do you feel that you should go? What aligns with your own mission statement, and
Mm-hmm.
what you bring to the table? And I've had to do that a couple of times, mainly because, as I said before, you're so busy doing that you don't take a beat and stop and say, look at or update your resume even when you're not looking for a position, right? I think we
That's
get into
right.
that, okay, I've been working at this job, and I've been doing it, but then you didn't take a breath to look like, oh, I did set up this whole protocol. This wasn't done. I did set up a curriculum. I did do a SOP on how
Mhm.
you get this done. And if that's not valued there, that's going to be valued somewhere else, right? So the things that you
That's
just do
right.
innately to help you focus on your position or your responsibility pool, are also the same things that are going to stand out or highlight, so that you can more easily align with something that gives you a challenge, right? You may not want to change positions, or you're okay, but a challenge never hurt anybody, right? You grow with challenges.
That's right.
That's what I would suggest. And some of the things that I've done to reframe. I like that word, reframe, or change my mind about how I am processing, being in the same place, or how I want to get to over here. I want to accomplish this, but you have to change your mind, because if you keep telling yourself, "Oh, I'm not, I'm not going to ever do this, or I'm not going to get here," or the negative, you need positive energy. And I would suggest that you either align and or are coached, whether that be through YouTube, through conversation, through vlogging, people who align or are where you want to go, the trajectory of where you want to go is what I'll say this. So I was requested to perform a certain role, and what I did not get was a definition of what that would include. And I didn't get a salary increase, but I had my experience. And what my experience showed me was that this is the next step. While you have a lot of experience here, I was working in a different phase, environmental or preliminary engineering. Now this is construction, and these are projects that I'm familiar with. I've actually won awards for on these projects. So I had to zoom out, not in, zoom out and look at the position, what was needed, my skill set, where I was working. And so while I wasn't given guidance, I was able to use what I knew to create my title, as well as the blank line about what this position was going to do. So if I was to stay stuck in, "Oh, I'm not going to get a grade, or I'm not going to get a step," and blah, 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 instead of using this as an opportunity and taking a further step, make an announcement on LinkedIn, I know what that sounds like, because in most realms, you would think, "Oh, she just stepped up. Wow, she just," yeah, it is a bigger responsibility. And while it was verbally a promotion, nobody needed to know that I wasn't getting money at that time, right? But I still had to celebrate it. And so you make announcements, and then, people in my industry, they know what that means. They know that my territory is getting widened,
Yeah,
right?
and see, and that's that line, mate, right? Because sometimes, no matter what you do, like, you got the transferable skills, you wow, and in the interviews, it's just not happening, right? And so, there's a season where you may have to begin laying some groundwork, right? To prepare you for that next thing. And so even that change of title, right? To really emphasize what this new role is part of laying that groundwork, because people see it, people recognize it. It is still something, right, that goes on your resume that people will get to see, so that, when the time is right for you to make that transition, right? And we are all women of faith
Yes.
on this podcast. And so, right, we haven't even talked about the spiritual factor, but
Yeah.
that's
And
like a
I
whole
do have
nother.
two scriptures that I did come across in preparing. So maybe in part two, we'll get to the scriptures.
Yes, yes.
Right.
But I do want to highlight, because we're about at our hour mark,
Mhm.
but we are going to go there. But before that, just want to highlight, Jacqueline, some of what you said. You got to understand what's important, what aligns with your mission statement. Where are you going? Thing you said that was super important was you got to update that resume, even when
That's
things are
right.
going good, because you never know when you're going to see something else. And then you just talked about how even while you're waiting, you kind of, realigned and made your own, you moved up in a position. It may not have increased anything pay wise, but still you created that position for yourself. And I'm pretty sure the company is taking notice of that. But here's what we want to do, everybody, because we don't want to keep you all super long. We want to do a part 2 to kind of move into so Jacqueline is going to move us into that spiritual realm because she has some scriptures to share. And then with both Nikita and Jacqueline, I want to talk about how do you not stay stuck when you make that transition? How do you, I hate to kind of compare it to it, but it's like when you date someone who's not good for you, how do you stop dating the same type of people? So when you make that transition in your career, how do you get that unstuckness out of your mind? Because it's easy to fall back into that same loophole where you're just like, oh, I'm here now. I'm going to stay here for another 20 years. And then you look up and now you're 125. So I want for us to kind of dive into that. And then also how does our spiritual walk kind of influence in that? But before we go and wrap things up, Nikita and Jacqueline both have extracurricular activities that I think you all would be interested in. So I'm going to let Jacqueline start first, introduce what it is that you do outside of the government. And then Nikita, you can do the same.
Okay. So I am.
Wait, she's pulling out files. What?
But I'm an international best-selling author of 3 books. They're all available on Amazon or through me directly. I'll autograph them and everything. And
what are the name of the books?
The name of the books are Purpose, Not Perfect. That is my solo book. That's my debut book. The first anthology was called Journey to Greatness. Myself and 17 other wonderful authors across the country. And the last book was entitled Your Voice Mattered. It was a gift from our publisher after the civil unrest and George Floyd and everything to talk about our voices and how they matter. And it does come full circle. I speak about, just my own personal experience throughout that the pandemic and the troubling times we went through. So as I said earlier,
where can we?
Lady J Thorne at gmail.com. I also have a YouTube channel, Lady J Thorne, and we can share those links. And I'm on Lady J Thorne on all social media, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and X. I guess it's called X now. Lady J Thorne. So that's what that is how you can reach me, as well as Lady J Thorne at gmail.com.
So y'all, we want to help plateau Jacqueline. All right, let's get her, look at her material. And Jacqueline, one quick question. They can purchase the books from you, right?
They can directly from me. Yes.
No disrespect to the other A word.
Right. Yes, they're all available on Amazon, but I would prefer if you purchase them from me. I have stock, so you're your own bookseller as well. So they can if you would like one of the books or all 3 of the books, I'll put together a little package and you can.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, we're gonna put her email up that she can.
Do you still have any merch left? You still have any merch? I know you had some merch at one point.
I do. I coordinated with 2 other authors to do Daddy's Girls Talk. Daddy the Father. That's where our connection was. So I have some of that merch. And the other I can order. I have mugs. I have canvas, shoulder bags. Yeah, I can do a package. I could just have to, order some more. But I do appreciate the future supporters, and I look forward to sharing a little bit more on our next phase.
We gonna get you them followers. Okay, I'm sorry. All right, and Nikita, go ahead and bless us with what it is that extracurricular things that you do.
Extracurricular, outside of running behind my 7-year-old, which is enough in itself, right? I do one-on-one coaching, and I do some consulting work. So I do have I used to do some event planning, which is still kind of near and dear to my heart. So there's a couple of different things that I do, but under my LLC, which is detail therapy, right? And detail therapy is it was twofold for me because it is about the details, like all of the little details are, and the things that most people consider minute are the things that I think really set you apart. Um,
Right.
and I think that this work is not only um, therapy of sorts for the folks that I work with, but it also is therapy for me and helping to help folks figure out what's next, right? And drive that. So it has come a bit full circle for me in the work that I do and the coaching that I do. Because like I said, I initially thought that therapy was what I wanted to do. And while it looks different, it is some of that same type of framework that I use when I'm working with, clients directly, and helping you figure out how to get to your next thing.
And then also, see, I know all y'all's
You
business,
know
right?
all my stuff.
Uh-oh.
Also, I had the privilege of sitting in on a session that Nikita did, that just blessed the people. So, Nikita, tell us about that topic. If you are, if your place of employment allows you to bring in speakers to talk about different things, Nikita might be the woman that you want. So, Nikita, tell them about that topic.
So I've developed a program called What's on Your Plate. And it's about identifying ways to find balance and build boundaries. And basically, what it does is it takes our upbringing experience and the relationships with how we were taught to interact with food, and it translates that in how we now manage our proverbial life plates, right? So, and I don't want to like it's there's a lot to
You have to
go
give
into
you have to give one example. One example.
with the breakdown of it. But like, so there's a component of the session that talks about meal prepping, right? And how meal prepping is like you have these little bowls and they're meant to only hold a certain amount of food for you for that specific meal. And we align the same thing with this proverbial life plate we have, right? If you have a lunch plate and you're trying to put dinner sized portions on it, it's not going to fit. The plate is going to overflow. You're not going to be able to hold it. It's going to be too much for you, and you've probably put more on the plate than you need to consume, right? You're going to be overly full, you're going to be tired, and all of these things. But the way that we framed those relationships from early on, really for most of us, unless we've done some work to make different associations, translates into how we manage and how we take on and how we carry the things that we keep on our proverbial life plate. And it's like 7 chapters that we walk through, that really just kind of address how what it looks like, how you identify your nutritional value, so what's good, what do you need to keep on the plate, how you clean things off your plate, how you ensure you keep dessert and the fun things in your life. And so it just walks you through. It's pretty much and I'm working to further develop it so that it is a full curriculum.
All right now, if you need a chief of staff, call me. I'm going chief of staff. No, I'm kidding. This is wonderful, y'all. So as you can see, we all have our own definition of success, but as you can see, everybody on this panel, we are all working women. We all have extracurricular things that we do. And as Nikita's saying, we need to find some sort of balance. So I hope that this episode is a stepping stone. At least I hope your right eyebrow just peaked a little bit, just so you can say, okay, they're talking my language. What do I need to do next? So what you need to do next is click that follow button on our Instagram page. We're going to put it up. Share this video and then tune in. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you will be ready for part 2 when part 2 actually does post. So we want to thank our guest today, Jacqueline. Everybody put your hands together for Jacqueline. And we want to thank Nikita as well. Thank you. And then I want to thank myself. And I want to thank my co-host, Yolanda. And you all saw my son walk across the back, so he is okay.
He is our like support staff. Yeah. Yes.
We're getting to the age where now the boy part becomes very dangerous. So just pray for me in that level of parenting. But anyway, thank you for joining us. We all hope you have a fabulous week, and be sure to share and subscribe. All right, see you later.